All right, we're coming in hot with another episode of Camp Content. We're excited today about our guest, as we always are, because we always have a lot of fun on this show. But today we have Steve Kilberg, who is a renowned expert specializing in assisting small to medium-sized e-commerce, SaaS, and internet businesses with mergers and acquisitions. His expertise lies in helping businesses execute a growth through acquisition strategy. And as a sell-side advisor, Steve guides online business owners with assets below 10 million through the intricate process of selling all or part of his companies, or of their companies rather. From developing a comprehensive selling strategy to marketing the businesses for sale, negotiating deals, and handling due diligence, he ensures a seamless transition for those looking to make strategic moves. So we're excited to talk to him about content today. But Matt, you've got something else to add.
Yes, I mean, basically just no matter what you sell, the challenges you face, his expertise can rejuvenate your growth trajectory for sure. Obviously, Steve believes the opportunities are abundant within reach each day, wanting to be seized. So with access to a network of eager buyers actively seeking profitable websites, Steve can help you navigate the dynamic landscape of growing, selling your online business. So that's basically what we're going to dive into today. So yeah, just stay tuned. We're gonna do another good episode here at Camp Content, and we're gonna get Steve's insights, expertise on business acquisition, strategic investments, all that good stuff.
Boom. And of course,
Boom.
Content marketing. Without further ado, Steve, thanks for coming on the show today. How's your morning going?
It's going amazing. Thanks, Molly, and thanks, Matt. I'm excited to share some tips. So hopefully your listeners can use one or two tips and apply them to their business so they can grow and eventually have an exit plan, because that's really where you make all the money, is when you exit your digital assets.
Yeah, Steve might be the first guest that understands when I say, once we do the intro about everybody, that's a good tire pump there, because we were talking about playing some hockey a bit before. That's a big term we use. So we were pumping his tires a little there.
That's right. Well, that's what it's all about. Well, and you use quite a bit of content marketing in your business as well, correct?
Absolutely.
It's
critical
talk
for
a little bit about that?
Yeah, really, for any business. And this is a great tie-in. This is why I was excited to be on the podcast with you guys. Is so I get to see behind the scenes with all these businesses. As you mentioned, I work with Saas, e-commerce, small affiliate websites, which is going to be content related, or mobile app type businesses, and they all should be producing more content. Some do, and a lot don't, unfortunately, and it really hinders their ability to grow their asset. Because if you think about this, there's many marketing tactics that someone can do, paid ads, etc. But a lot of people just let the content side slip, and it really hurts them, because at the end of the day, you want to get the most money for your asset, because they make a decision. They say, okay, I want to sell for a variety of reasons. And yet when we start digging below the covers, there's holes I see every time. And this is one of them, is that they're not producing enough content, which would get them more organic traffic and just share how their brand is different than someone else. And that is critical in today's world, especially now with the advent of AI in the last few months.
So what kind of content do you typically suggest that your clients create to build more of that portfolio?
Yeah, that's a great question. I tell people to do whatever they're comfortable with, because anything, they really should be doing all the above. So video content, as we all know, is so easy today. With one of the positives, I guess, I hate to say positives of the pandemic, was that we all got accustomed to using Zoom and forums like this, right? So we're all very, very accustomed to that. I was already doing that pre-pandemic, but now afterwards, I'm on Zoom, like you guys, on Zooms or calls like this every day, and so it's just natural for me. And that's something you can do. But the thing that people don't realize is how you can repurpose this content. This is why I personally love video content, because you can take that content and you can transcribe it and turn it into a blog, turn it into a social media post. There's so many things. You can take you can flip your camera on yourself, for example. And if you don't even want to be on the camera, you can do kind of a PowerPoint slide or just show something on the screen. There are just so many ways to create content, yet so many people don't do it. And it's really shocking to me that they just choose not to, because they think it's too hard. They don't know what to talk about it. It's like, oh my Lord, how can you think this? But as you guys know, a lot of people struggle with that.
For sure. So I'm curious, what was your first delve into like video content and being so comfortable filming and editing and, leveraging that time, because it is a little unique for sure.
It is unique. So I'm a little bit of an early adopter with that. So I don't know if you guys remember, I can't even remember the name of the camera, but there was one years ago. It was really slim and it was similar to a phone that we have now, but it was like the first handheld digital recorder, and you'd plug it into your computer, download it, and then you could upload, and then you had to edit and do all this stuff. And I was doing all that stuff. Now part of it is I tend to kind of like to do all those tech things maybe a little bit more than I should, but I just happen to enjoy that stuff. There's so But that's another thing that I think stumble or holds people back, is they say, oh, I could maybe turn the camera on, but the tech stuff is like, oh, it's too hard. And so that becomes an excuse. But there's really no excuse, because with services out there like Fiverr or Upwork, you can find somebody anywhere in the world that will do that for you very, very inexpensively, like less than $10 or $10. Or there's other software out there now there's some newer stuff that's been kind of on the market, and now it's come back. They've made some massive upgrades. So if you don't want to be super technical, because you don't have to be, as long as you can edit a Word document, you can edit a video, and that is what's cool. There's a new tool that, or not new, but it's a tool that's really upgraded. And so it's one of those drag and drops, and it's like, if you can edit a Word document, you can edit a video. That's how easy it is nowadays.
So my kind of question. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to look at the difference between kind of being a buy side advisor and a sell side advisor. Right, on the one end, you're kind of helping companies who want to sell maybe either part or the whole thing, and then on buy side, right, you're looking at a company that wants to acquire something or another part of a business and make themselves, a little stronger. So when is kind of the best time for each part to make that acquisition or make that sale? Kind of.
That's a great question, Matt. So if you're looking to grow your business, right, there's really kind of three ways if you just think about it, makes sense, right? If you're going to try to grow your business, whatever that is, right, you either need more customers, you need to sell them more things, or you need to sell more things to them for more money. That's like the most common way to grow. But the thing that people overlook is you can actually go and acquire other assets that will either be complementary to your business, competitive, or in some way, shape, or form. But people get so intimidated by that, they think, I don't have any, because the first reaction is, I don't have the money. And it's like, oh, you just don't know. And people don't know what they don't know, because there are so many businesses out there right now that will sell off either their entire asset or pieces of their business, right? So an asset of a business could be an email list, right? They're like, I'm not doing anything with this email list. I'll sell it to you for this. And you can do payment plans. People don't realize that. Like, you don't have to come up with a lump sum of cash. You can actually do that to buy an entire business. This is a great example. We just sold a business, and the businesses that I work with are typically all over the world. It's really been fascinating. So we just sold a business down in Mexico to some young guys who started it. They're really sharp guys, really great guys. They grew this because they saw a niche opportunity in something. They built this asset, they grew it, and they couldn't really sell it or market it, right? They just struggled. So we found a buyer for them in Los Angeles. And so he came in and said, look, you guys don't have enough customers. I'll buy this from you, but I'm going to put a little bit of money down to pay for just so some closing, because there's closing costs. Think about it as like you're buying a house, right? There's some closing costs that has to happen, right? So you have to have some cash at closing. But he said, I'm going to give you this price, which is actually a very fair price based on what the revenue was being produced by the business. But I'm going to pay you in monthly installments over the next 2.5 years. And basically because the decisions the guys had made, they'd kind of like, basically they grew it, got to a spot, couldn't make it grow, and so they moved on to other opportunities. And they're like, well, we still have this asset; it's worth something, which it was. So they sold it, and now he's making monthly payments for the next 2.5 years. So literally, it cost him I can't share the number, but it was not that much. Something that anybody could come up with. You can get an SBA loan for that amount as well. And the SBA loans are still, with all interest rates changing, are still very amenable. So there's a lot of creative ways you can do this on a buy side. Now on a sell side, the other thing to think about is when you're at a spot where you don't, and this is the other thing that we always see with our clients, is a lot of them lack the marketing skills, or they lack pieces of growth, right? And they've tried to hire different people to solve those problems. And as you guys know, that nobody knows everything. This is such a complex world that we work in, right? That we evolve, that we're in deep in on our side. But there's so many moving parts that it's hard to know everything, right? So they've hired other people. They can't make it work, or they made bad decisions with hiring people, because that happens. And so they just can't grow. And so then they're either burnt out, they want to move on to another project. A life change happens. There's just a variety of reasons, which are very common. So they decide to sell. And as you said in the intro, I work with businesses that are doing less than 10 million, And these are considered assets. Now, the reason I focus on less than 10 million is twofold, because these are assets, first of all. That's a critical part. And secondarily, private equity doesn't go that low because it's not worth their time, right? And there's a lot of work to selling a business. People don't realize the amount of work that goes in. And think about it as selling a house, right? You got to do a lot of work to get the house ready to sell, right? A lot of things. Sometimes you maybe don't do that remodeling or don't paint that room. That's fine, but that's going to lower the valuation of the business. So there's a lot of, it's very similar in that concept for your listeners who may be thinking, going, oh my God, that's just too over my head. It's intimidating for a lot of people. But one of the things I really wanted to share with you guys and your listeners is that it's not as hard as you think. There's people out there like myself, and there's a few other people that'll do this, but we really get in the trenches and really help guide people through that to help make sure that we can find a qualified buyer for their asset. And then we take them and walk them through the entire process. We do like an escrow agent, so the money goes there. So that's the biggest thing is, okay, where does the money go, right? So the buyer has to put the money into escrow. We do a handover. We typically do it through a digital call like Zoom or something like this. And then we make sure all the passwords are changed, all those things, all those little details. And we have to do that in a secure environment because you can't do that through email. So it's got to be done live. And then once it's done live, the buyer says, okay, I now have control of all these assets. And he'll send an email to the escrow agent and they release the money. And that, whatever money is at closing, right? So you don't have to have a lot, but of course the seller wants as most money at closing as possible. And that's what we try to get for but at the same time, that's kind of how it works at a high level. And I know I rambled on a little bit there, but hopefully that was descriptive enough.
That's incredible. And I just have one kind of follow up to that. I mean, reading your thing, it's obviously like, your goal is to focus on, saving jobs, growing companies. Is there kind of a specific example you can think of a company that maybe was like, hey, we need to sell something, we're going to lose a lot of people here, and you were able to make that sale there and they were able to keep jobs, or kind of one example that sticks out like that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we're working on a deal like that right now. So it's a business of the digital, they're a digital asset right now. This happens to be an app for your phone, right? But these guys have 25 employees, so they're a small business, right? But they're struggling right now to kind of grow, and so they are looking for a buyer. We've got a buyer lined up, and so we're in that stages now of all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes between now and actual closing date. But they need to sell the business because otherwise they're going to have to let some people go, and they don't want to do that because they've got this asset that just needs. And the thing that they're struggling with is all businesses that we work with, our primary reason is they're struggling with the marketing aspect, and they don't know what they don't know. They're specialists in their field, and they just can't seem to scale it enough to turn that corner. And yet they're so close, right? So that's the thing that they're just right there. And really we've got a couple of businesses that fall into that category. We have another one that's down in South America. It's the same thing. They've got a handful of employees. They're all diversified all over the world, and they're at a spot where they've chosen to sell. And so we're kind of in the earlier phases of that one, but it's the same thing.
That's interesting. So are you working with these companies on their marketing and that to kind of fill that gap? Because I mean, we definitely see that. And then there's also a lack of budget, so they don't really know anything about marketing. It's like artists too, they're like, what do you mean I can't just paint and live in this world? I have to understand how to do things. It's like, yeah, it's not the field of dreams, So are you like advising your clients on how to get that marketing done? Is that part of what you're doing?
We can do that. We definitely offer that as a service, but the reality is right now, as of this filming of this podcast, as we're so overloaded with deals that we just don't have the time. And so, it depends on, and this is a great question. Let me give you a little bit more context to that, Molly, is it depends really what they need, right? So it's the best part about what I love to do, because I know the digital marketing side. Like, I grew a business from an idea, grew it to 7 figures, and this thing called the pandemic crushed our business. And painful to admit, it is what it is, right? But I know how all those stuff works. And so I can look at a business now, and this is why I love doing this, because I get to see all the financials, I get to see their marketing, and then how their business operates. And I can look at some things. And the other common thing, and I really want to share this with your audience, your listeners, is that business owners, and this is every business we work with, it's just so common, it ties back directly to content, which is why I want to share this, is they'll have an email list with their business, right? Sometimes it's 6,000, 8,000, 15,000, 100,000. And guess how many times they email their list?
Never
to a couple of times. They're just leaving. And that is money sitting right in front of them, which just ties directly to content. Crazy. And they go, because they're specialists in their field, they look and say, I don't know how to create content, or I can't do that, or I don't have the time for that, or I don't want to pay someone to do that. And it's like, yes, but you should pay someone to do that because there's money right in front of you. It's painful. We have a business right now that we're selling, and they have a list of 120,000. And I'm not kidding. And this is nothing against the owners because they're great people. And we're trying to help them. And they've got like people who have bought or did a trial of something that bought 30,000, I think, of that 120,000. So there's about 90,000 people that are kind of there, and they've basically opted into receiving something from them. And I said, well, how many times do you email part of your list? And they said, why would we email them? They didn't buy anything from us. That's what their answer to me was. I'm not kidding.
I mean, I'm not surprised
90,000.
by that. I mean, I would kill for a 90,000.
know,
Will they
so
sell it to me?
right.
Well, I mean, it begs a point because a lot of times people think that marketing is sales and that sales is sleazy. But if you
Yes.
believe in your product, then you shouldn't feel sleazy or weird selling it, because you should be excited about what your product does and the benefits and how it
Yep.
transforms your customers' life experience, journey, whatever it might be, right? And so, yeah, I think I've been thinking about this a lot, in the agency world. I think that there's this huge gap in finding a sustainable, affordable way to create content versus like hiring an agency, right? And you see a lot of these tech companies, they start up, they hire some company at $25K a month.
Yeah.
They produce absolutely nothing. It's a rotating cast of characters. It's not the same staff members. It's very disjointed. There's no real tangible results, but there's a lot of money going out the door. And so then they say, oh, well, that's a waste of time. Or they paid 10 grand for a brand video that sucks, frankly, and it was uploaded to YouTube without any information, and it got 17 views. And so now the CEO is saying video doesn't work and it's too expensive. So how do you kind of deal with those that pushback? Because we get that a lot, and I do think there's a lot of problems with these agencies charging an exorbitant amount of money and not producing any actual results or assets whatsoever. But I think that there's like a middle ground, right, between a 25K a month agency and somebody on Fiverr. And so, yeah, how do you deal with those objections with your clients?
That's a great question, because we do deal with those, right, where they'll pay some insane amount of money. And I know I'm glad you brought this up, because you sit there and say, what? You paid how much and they did what? Right? It makes me
mad for them.
Exactly. Yeah. So the thing that I think a lot of this comes back to is because, and again, you guys will understand this, is that I ask them a lot of questions. And here's another area that a lot of these business owners struggle with, right? Is they don't know their avatar at a very deep level. And what I mean by that is they'll know the demographics maybe, but not always. But when I ask them about the psychographics of their list or their prospects, who is their ideal customer, or who is their customer right now, they have no idea. And it's shocking, you guys, because these businesses are still successful and we're still able to sell these businesses. They're still profitable. And you realize then you're like, oh my Lord, you were leaving so much money on the table. It is. That goes back to why I have so much fun doing this, because I get to see behind the scenes, and I look at the financials, and I'm looking, and I look at their email list, I look what they're doing, and I'm like, oh my Lord. And so actually my wife and I looked at buying one of these assets a while back, and we just didn't, because it's just, there's just so much you have to do. We have to really focus on stuff. But this is the other thing that looking at from that aspect. But to specifically answer your question, Molly, is I really have gotten much better even asking deeper questions, but it's just some of those things. It's like, well, tell me about your ideal buyer. What's their age? And they should give a singular age, not like, well, it's 50 and above. Well, okay, yeah, but give me an age, because it should be. So to give you an example, like for our business, we had an e-commerce business. I knew that our buyer was a 48-year-old, or is a 48-year-old female, which is kind of in limbo right now, but it's a 48-year-old female who lives outside of San Antonio, Texas, owns an iPhone, is in the medical field, is married, college educated. If she's in the medical field, she's actually a nurse. She has a dog. They have a child. And she uses an iPhone. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And why? Because I did understand this, that I had to know my buyer at a very deep level. Now, granted, yes, we sell to people more than 48 years old. We do sell to men as well. But that's like our sweet spot of our buyer. And when you start looking at things, there will always be things that will overlap that individual person. So if your listeners can take anything away, is that's another thing, is make sure you know who you're serving. So if you have a physical product or you have a service, you need to know who you service at a very deep level, because then you can talk to them and understand their pain points. And that's another thing that people don't do. And that ties back to content. So if I know you have all these pain points, I can create endless supply of content.
Right. Absolutely. So what is your number one piece of advice for Well, it's two questions I got for you. I'm curious the percentage of people who are selling their businesses who created the business to sell it, or if selling their business became a byproduct of owning it. That's my first question. We'll
Yeah,
start
that
there.
will start. It was really the latter portion. They started this because they're specialists in their field. They had this idea, and they're just so excited, and they built it and started making money. And I got to a spot, and now it's also, I guess I call it the Peter principle, right? That's a phrase out there. It's like they don't know what they don't know, and so they've grown the business to the top of their acumen, their ability today. It's not that they're not smart people. It's not that they couldn't learn this stuff,
Right.
but they're capped out where they're at today, and they can't grow it. And again, they've hired agencies, and some of these people, like you said, we have another client right now in the Middle East who paid an agency those numbers that you talked about, 5 figures. And I'm like, they did what for you? And it's like, no wonder you're kind of struggling. And now these are some people who are like, we're just selling because we can't grow. We can't get to that spot again. It's like, well, there's another example. And this agency did nothing.
That's right. Yeah, the Peter principle, rising to the level of your incompetence.
Yep.
I learned about that years ago. I'm fascinated by it.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a natural progression of life. So,
Yeah. Yep.
So it's a smaller percentage of people who know they want to sell the business.
Correct.
From the beginning.
From the beginning, it is really small. And that's the other thing I would really stress to your listeners is whatever you do, if you have a digital business that you want to do, and there's so much opportunity out there, right? You should be thinking from day one, I'm going to build this and put pieces together and make sure I'm creating content so I can sell this asset one day. You may not sell it for a while, but here's the other real big deal that happens is in 5 years from now, I can guarantee your life is going to change and you aren't going to know what's going to happen. And that's what happened to us is that my wife and I were literally traveling the world and then life happened and we came back to the States because her dad got sick. So we had the flexibility because we were like you, Molly, we were digital nomads. We were traveling and we were living our dream and we came back and and then the pandemic happened. Now our life has changed drastically and you just don't know what's going to happen in life. And so thinking from day one to sell it, we were going to, I chose not to, and then the pandemic happened. So now we're trying to build it back up. So it is what it is.
There it is. There it is. Well, I know we got a hard stop. And so I just want to ask one more question. And then that is, where's the best place for people to find you to get advice or assistance in selling their business and moving on to the next phase of their life?
Yeah, well, thanks again, you guys, for the opportunity to chat with you and your listeners. So if they would like to do a chat, they can go to SKRP Media. That's skrpmedia.com/camp content, name of the podcast. And they can just answer a couple of questions and I'll do a free call with them to see where I can, kind of point them in the right directions. And if they want to do something in a longer engagement, we can do that. But I can give them some tips and ideas in a short call. And every time I encourage your viewers that are in that spot to do that because both of us will learn something, myself included. And I love doing that for people. So.
Excellent. Right on. Well, Steve, it was a pleasure having you on the show. I was looking forward to it since our call a week or so ago. Good luck with everything in your business. And hey, you never know, we might be talking because I actually am one of the smaller percentage of people that built Heartcast Media with the intention of selling it. And so I'd be very interested to talk to you someday for sure. So, but not yet because we love what we do. We're not ready to go yet. So, but we're ready to end the podcast. So on that note, thank you all for tuning in. Check out Steve's website, get that discovery call going. And of course, if you find the content valuable, share with your network and say what's up on LinkedIn. We promise we won't be mean. And on that note, thanks for tuning in and we'll catch you on the next one.
Produced by Heartcast Media.